Okay, we're looking at Gobekli Tepe again, and I don't want to burn y'all out on it. In fact, what I've been trying to do is show you more and more reveals so it kind of sets in your mind, but also kind of like much of history, looking at what we first saw and what the thoughts might have been versus what we find now. This is an overview of it. And this is the major pits that we see with the pillars and everything going on. And I have a revelation video coming up from this site actually on that'll go with it to this enclosure that's here. Here's the other one. Here's the other one. There's a small one here. And they found other parts of it. If you'll look through this little blue right here, you can see a big group of people in there. This is the newer excavation. You can kind of tell because the soil is darker there, and this pit they did first for it is much lighter, and they're working their way over. And they had done this site. Things have been found here, artifacts and so on, and I didn't want to clutter what we were talking about as far as structure, as far as cosmic alignments and sacred geometry and things like that with that just yet. It's almost that it feels better to go through its parts and then go, and they found this, they found this, here's the current thoughts on this, and this, that, and the other. I'd like to put it all in one video, but I think it would just go way too long, and the way I don't shut up, it would just go, you know. So I somehow had a revelation, and this is stuff that I was supposed to be showing you at Christmas time during the new revelation of what I'm going to start showing you this year, and I got a real late start on it due to the delay. But we won't talk any more about that. Let's talk about this. One thing you can notice here, if you watch my recent video on this, and I might put it up in the top left-hand corner or top right at the very end of this, probably top right, is they've already found the underground radar telemetry, and there's a triplet that's over here, and there's another one that's over here, conspicuously just not even where they're going. Here's that line that we talk so much about leading into the main enclosure. That's what everybody talks about and pretty much everybody knows, but they dug it up the hill and got the rest of it here. There's also stuff that's in here, and the oddity here is that they've got this orchard planted there, and it looks like it's being cared for in some way. And I know the rooting to that stuff can't be any good to the little walls like this that are already shown up under that. I'm not sure how much the man makes off that. Say he makes $300 a year or whatever, you know. Give him $30,000 and move that crap over someplace else down here or something. Looks like he's already started a new place right here. I don't know if that's to replace this in any way or what's going on with this concept. And they've said they're going to put it on hold, that they've got all these sites going in here. And they put the potato chip over this. Looks like a Pringle. But there's more here. And there's more here in these circles. And you can tell here, listen, this is bedrock. And one thing that people aren't getting yet, it seems like, and they don't really talk about this in it, but this place is scarped to bedrock when the people lived there. All this accumulation of dirt is not very deep. It goes to nothing right here. Here's part of the rock sticking up. There's bedrock everywhere here, and this isn't real deep. In fact, there's this socket here where I'm sitting in the middle of. There's no trees, and around it the trees are very weak. And it's probably because they're hitting bedrock. They're not able to put tap roots down and do things like that. But if they put tap roots down, they're diving into sites like this with rooting. And that's not a great idea. And it surely can't be a great idea to try to raise the trees in this little of fertile soil versus what you can get just 100 yards away in some direction. Now, they probably ought to till that soil and go through and sift it and see if they can find anything, because in my thoughts, even though this is looking like, now hold up, the first city, because there are so many compartments, each one of these little socketed areas, hell, there's 12 of them inside that little cube and 10 in this and so on, are rooms and enclosures and stuff. And so there was a large contingent of people of this, apparently the Lords of Arata, of the ancient Sumerian tales and living up in this area, doing all certain work, known as great craftsmen and stuff, even to the Sumerians. And I've often said in my old videos, talking about this before this was even well known, and right as soon as it came out, I'm like, bing, ha ding, there it is right there. Exactly where they said it was. Isn't that amazing? And hidden all this time, and once we get some aerial photos, we've been able to go, real good at it. But we've talked a lot about Gobekli Tepe, and I told you that that's just the tip of the iceberg, and all these statements that are kind of like, there's more to it than meets the eye, blah, 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 blah. I could say 100 different things, but in reality, there are many more sites that show these people and shortly after. But if we were to go just these people, what we're going to look at is the sites that contain T-pillars. And the T-pillar is really significant to these people. We understand that. And it's as significant as some of the other icons of the Sumerians that show up later, and Egyptians, and iconography that goes around. You can say this T-pillars is something that's really denotes these people. This is from this DAI heritage site. You can see it on the bottom left-hand corner, DAI. And it's really kind of a side blog, and it's created by some of the people that are involved with it directly. Although it's not the direct thing, scientific studies, it's just like a side blog kind of thing. They even answer some questions and stuff, and that's what I'm going to get to earlier. So, not to squinch it down here, this is a map of all, let me see if I can get this, Kading, of all of the sites that they have found so far that contain T-pillars. And then the round sets have the same type of structural setups and things, but they're not built off of the T-pillars. And there are ones that'll have both. So then they have the circulature. So like Kettle Hoyuk and Neville Corey have a little bit different look than each other. But they can tell now how they really do connect with each other in many ways. And every spot you're seeing on this map connects to it. And, well, where are we at? Well, here's the Euphrates River, and the Sumerians used to live all up through in here, and all up in through and this is the area, the fertile plains here was known as Eden by them themselves, so that's where we get it from in the Bible. And here's a major river system running in here, and here's one that runs down, and here's one that runs over, and here's one that runs in from the east. And therefore there's that 4-river system they talk about in Genesis, and the headwaters in this place that migrates down into Sumerian lands and ends up being the Ubaid culture that turns into the Sumerians, that gets later taken over by Elamites and then Akkadians and so on in it. But there are so many of these places in here, it's not even funny. And Gobekli Tepe is just that one right there. It's the one with the little bigger one that's right there in the center of it all. But just as I said, just on the other side of the river, that's not too many miles away over there, there's another one. Well, it's kind of in between right there. In Sefer Tepe, he'll talk about, in Karahan Tepe, and Hasman Tepe. And so what's this Tepe? Well, it's a hill and a mound area that didn't used to be a hill or a mound. And people living there, and their filth, and over time, growing up, and the dirt that accumulates around it slowly builds up a city. And then they build it on top of another city and do it again and on top again. This is how they found the Ubaid culture, because the Sumerians, the Babylonians built on top of the Akkadian fix-up left over from the Elamites, who had built on top of the Sumerians, crushed down, who built on top of the Sumerians themselves a few times before they were actually, before that, building on what the Ubaid culture was built on. And if you were to take all that off except for the Ubaid culture, you'd have something similar to this. Do they have the pillars and stuff? No. But then again, there's some floor pieces and stuff that look like whole walls that have been laid down, and then other people just used it as a floor. And in a lot of these sites, they don't go to that deep. And we're going to go into a few places that they really have not excavated to any decent degree comparative to what you would do in many other sites. Not here, but in Samaria. And most of these have not been excavated or fully excavated. And I believe every one of the ones with the red dots are also not fully excavated but found. And that might be the map key for it. It doesn't say what the map key, but the current distribution of sites with T-shaped pillars with simple limestone stelae modified after Schmidt back in 2006. So they started being known about these sites, but it was kind of kept secret-ish because they didn't want anybody to go in looting them. And we're going to talk about that whenever we go into the Sumerians places, and some places that really haven't been excavated correctly and yet still are just been looted like crazy in time. And so we'll never know. Well, most of the time they don't loot deep enough. They loot down till they find stuff. They don't realize that actually that's on top of a whole nother civilization that might have some stuff in it, and that becomes more valuable. Of course, stupid people like me saying things like this and then watching it might get the ideas, but they really don't have the ability to do this type of thing, so it kind of leaves it out. But did you know that it spanned all of this range? Did you think it was just up in a little area? Well, Gobekli Tepe was. Nebuchadnezzar is here. You know, you have Catalhoyuk and stuff and places all around here, and then we're leading into a Jordan River Valley. This is the Med. It's just right there. It's just right there. This is the Caucasus Mountains running through here, and the mountains of Ararat and Arata. And ancient Urfa, which some people say that's Ur of the Chaldees that Abraham came from, and that he didn't come from Ur that's down the Euphrates here, but he came from there. But since the tale is so Sumerian based, it's pretty much got to be. And whenever they heard the tale, they were hearing it in Babylonian captivity. But maybe they heard that it was from there. One thing for sure, this iconography is all the way up through here in later times, cuneiform writing and stuff, and it bends and goes down into those Canaanite or Phoenician lands. And you can see it from Egypt all the way around here into Hattusha and all the way out over here in between the Tigris and Euphrates and the Sumerians that helped begin to start so many things. And up until recently, we were giving them credit for all of these things, but coming out of nowhere like popcorn. And I always said it was Proto-Indo-Europeans, but they seemed so nomadic, and there wasn't that much showing for them. And I'm trying to show little pieces of pottery in places they know they settled. And look, they found this sun wheel thing that's just like Stonehenge kind of deal, and got it all going on. And here's these Isaac and Kurgan burials, and what that means with Isaac of the Bible, and concepts and names, and the reason they chose names like that whenever it was put back into the Deuteronomist and Yahwist form of the Bible. But that's another video. He tells you the characteristic element of Gobekli Tepe's architecture are T-shaped pillars. In the older layer 3, which is the oldest of the 10th millennium BC, the monolithic pillars weigh tons and reach heights between 4 and 5 meters. And that's the pillars and the circle stones. And in the very central pillars, they get to 5.5. They're a little bit taller. The T shape of the pillars is clearly an abstract depiction of a human body seen from the side. Evidence for this interpretation are the low relief depictions of arms, hands, and items of clothing like belts and loincloths, some of them having a fox on them and so on like that on some of the pillars. Often the pillars bear further reliefs, mostly depictions of animals, but also of numerous abstract symbols. And with us only having this to go off of, and maybe some cave painting, there's only some symbology that you can get out of it so far. And if these places were painted at one time, that's gone long ago. But there are some things that are painted. Let's see if I can go back one and then come back. For if I try to, here's a showing of one of those pillars, right? And here's the belt, and it has that H symbol on it. And I'm going to do a little series here coming up, but each one is small enough to where I might do a 5, maybe stretch it to a 10-minute video, but I'm going to put 3 or 4 of them together and make it a 30-minute thing and do a little Gobekli Tepe news for some other interesting information and tidbits I left out and that they've mentioned now and so on. But this is that fox one, and this is the belt that goes around it, and here's another fox-looking creature. He's got his arms around his belly and his hands. Here's that necklace-type the stela itself. There's no face on the pillar here, but it's meant to represent a body and a head, right? Has little loincloth situations going on. Well, they found these little bitty things too, like this. And a lot of people have said a lot of things out of them. They could be somewhat phallic. And you go, yeah, I guess it could be, especially when you look at this one from the back and the shape, overall shape. But they say that there's mainly male stuff here, but in reality, this to me looks very female, very feminine, even in its arch shape and posture that's going on. But whenever you get to look at its belly, does it have a loincloth? No, it's different. She has a child in front of it, or it has a child in front of it, and then I don't know, there's a symbolic hole down here and a child. So they've said also that this is the castle sculpture that's found in that one, but it's all made out of T-pillars. But in the same situation, they could have had a little phallic thing that maybe looked like this that they stuck in there and gave it an exaggerated phallus. And that's entirely possible too. But I could also see where this could be a feminine representation, very easy, and with the child, it looks like here. I don't think the child's choking with the belt around it or anything. I don't think that's what's going on here. There's a lot of things that go along with this, and whenever I go to that video that's about this and the series of them, we'll go into it. And this symbol and what some people have said about it and how he debunks it. It's rather funny, but there's those pictures again. So let's go back forward here. And the Tepe telegrams. So there's different animals in ones, and the female representation is also seen in that one that I was telling you about, and that'll be in that video too. Layer 3 is superimposed by layer 3 is superimposed by layer 2. So they're hanging on each other, and some are larger and taller than another and sunk down areas, and it depends on where there was bedrock, but it looks like that they used that, and they might have even taken and quarried out, and then that quarry was flat and used that to build the stuff on and run it down like that type of thing. People are investigating this still on methods, perhaps they would have done it, but they were around the local stone. You can see it in this picture right here, but we'll go into that. It's dating, that layer though is the later one. It's dating to the 9th millennium BC, and this layer is not characterized by big round enclosures, but by smaller rectangular buildings, like you see in the other one, all around, all over the place. But then there's the big temples. So a lot of people have said, well, there's little template things here at each one, kinda, but then that's the mothership kind of concept there, where the big woo goes, right? And pilgrimages and things like that, and it looks like that might have some merit to it. The number of the height of the pillars also is reduced, so not as many, and they're not as tall. In most cases, only the two central pillars remain, so the outsides don't have them as much, but the two centers are still there, and the biggest measuring around 1.5 meters, so they don't have that much height. Now, if this is the site that I'm thinking of here, what they did was they tried to dig this thing out, and then somebody started wiggling it, and it seemed to wiggle not too far below the surface, like it may be broken there, or that's where its hinge point is, and therefore it's only about that tall. And you can see for scale, that's a Swiss Army knife, and you can see this curled snake iconography up the side of it, burning on it. And by the way, it would have been exposed from right here at the knife. You can see this is darker and lighter. From here up, it was exposed, and it's how they kind of found this area. And you see the one behind it, and how it was exposed to right on this line right here. And you can even see a bunch of burnt marks on it, like people had utilized this little area for camping and things like that. But you can see the amount of stonework that's around here that's been broken to pieces, but some of them have little flat lines in them, so it shows you that was either a remnant of it happening or remnants of pieces. But this is a site that hasn't been dug up. For if that's a T-pillar and it goes down there, it could go farther, but okay, that's about it. But maybe this is the end of one and that's the start of another, and it's a little bit deeper, because that's the top of a T-pillar, it looks like, and then we would have the T coming off of it. And if it's even that height there, this would go 5 foot below the surface, 6 foot below the surface, and maybe be that little offset height that the others are. Kind of neat, but it's just one. The large pillars are so far only known from Gobekli Tepe, the ones that are massive like that. And you could say that about Stonehenge, the massive setup with the whole thing and the hinge top on it and everything. That's only known from there. But then all over the place they have stonework that's very much like it, eroded, very dated, and in lines some places and different structures. But that's the big whoa. Agreed so far. This may change over time, however, as there are now several sites that show smaller pillars resembling those of Gobekli Tepe's younger layer, so the smaller layer. But hey, if they dug out the smaller layer and found the bigger layer, who knows, might be there in one of these tells, or yet an unknown tell. That somebody goes, well, check out that bump over there, and they finally drove the 4-wheel drive over there, and they go, well, that looks like the top of a pillar. Because that's pretty much what happened at Gobekli Tepe. T-shaped pillars resembling the smaller examples from Gobekli Tepe Layer 2 were first recorded at the settlement site of Navali Quarry, which I'm probably going to start on my series whenever I go through it with that, because it's the other place other than this that was somewhat well known in Catalhoyuk and things, but all these other ones weren't. Several more sites in the near vicinity of Gobekli, though, known as Sefer Tepe, Karahan Tepe, Hamazon Tepe, are known to have similar pillars, but no excavation work has been carried out so far. Within the Neolithic site of Urfa Yeni Yal, which seems to have revealed a small T-shaped pillar in the course of construction work in that area, with Tasli Tepe and with Gesir Hoyuk, 3 more related sites were added to this list recently, and this is compiled in 2016, end of 2016. A further addition of the sites with T-shapes is the so-called Kilisk statue, which I just showed you, that closely resembles the general pillar form but has more naturalistic features defined by a text, and it's the external length of it, but all I did was go back. While most sites concentrate in a rather small radius around Gobekli Tepe, as we were looking up there, Gesir Hoyuk in the Turkish Tigris region has considerably widened the distribution area of circular enclosures. However, the pillars discovered there are slightly different shaped. They seem to be missing the bar of the T. So the top of the bar of the T is thicker, and in some cases they don't have that bas relief cut out where they usually have things done to it. It's just a straight pillar. Well, there's some of those over here too. Yeah, but it's a little different, and the shaping's a little different, but you can tell it's the same thing. And once they dig it, they might find out, oh, it's a little earlier. And this one only had a couple of them. By the time they got over there, they had a lot more going on, or maybe they put it all together in certain ones and things. There's a lot to be revealed about this site. Stelae have been discovered in a place called Kanyanu and Kermes Dere, which are two other sites. As only Gisser has been excavated, nobody can tell at the moment what the other sites might hide. And so here's all the little places he's talking about, and different places hooked up to him. And he only mentioned 1/3 of the places that are on this map here. As Kesmes Dere here and Gusir Hoyak, which seems to be a variation on a theme, if you will. But they have found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in a collection here. Across the river, 11 that are definitely T-pillared and match this up. And then corresponding sites and having the same flavor in all of these, which I think is 27. And this was in 2016. And so there's quite a few sites to be excavated, and it should be an exciting thing that hopefully they're getting on and helping with the government and making things happen and moving that guy's tree grove, or start digging up some of these other ones here and seeing what's going on in it. If it takes as long as it takes Smith to get that done in these, and these are not that size, you could do them in a little bit earlier, quicker time. And sure, you can't do them all at once, but you can have a person that's real good at it do this place and then go to Mary Bet right afterwards. You could have somebody else do this and then Jade afterwards. You could have somebody do Tel Abar and then Tel Kamad. You could have somebody here doing Arahan, come over and do a K, and so one after the other. I know this sounds like it's going to take 15 years, but if we wait 15 years before you start, you still haven't done anything. It's getting to be a common theme. But I think it's incredible that they have found this many that hook up to it. You can imagine this one site is incredible. Here's the one thing though. I can tell you a couple of these sites have some dating that seems to be older than Gobekli Tepe. And so with these other sites, we'll be reaching back further in time and covering the gap between there and Catalhoyuk, but also between there and the times of the Phoenicians and the things that we've talked about, and leading into the Sumerians in 3500 BC or so, enveloping over each other, and we'll have a good idea what was going on in this part of the world that's was an unknown culture until recently. I mean, imagine 20 years ago talking about things like that, and they're like, oh, you were talking some bullshit about some Aryan super race that tried to do it. And it's like, no, and quit trying to put Hitler on everything that doesn't go with your ideals. That's gotten disgusting long ago. Let's go with reality. And it may have been all a dream, all of a, this pottery, this thing, and then it goes pre-pottery and Neolithic, and then it's gone. Oh yeah, well this is PPN right here. It ain't gone. And you can tell by the architecture that they weren't ugh. So before I've talked about a lot of times, because I wanted to lead you through kind of, my age. I grew up in the late 60s and 70s on through 80s in school and on out. And what we were led to believe 20 years later wasn't even in effect. And here we are 40 years later, and all of a sudden it's nowhere near what they were saying. And I find it odd, but they're still saying and using those same old damn books. And I bet that very few classrooms have a teacher who goes, well, they tell you that, but there's this, and he clicks on a projector and starts trying to show you things. Or, has a big screen in there and he pulls up YouTube and tries to show you something. Probably doesn't happen much. But if you don't get a full view and then you grow up later and you think that it's different, maybe the whole views that made your cognitive reasoning are not what reality is. That's why each generation is brought upon the next to let them know. And things change. Granddad wouldn't have told you this. Well, there were some people back there that knew some stuff. There was a whole lot of them. But up until a few generations ago, they had to stay hidden. No longer is that the case. Although things at World War II changed all for a drastic, weird left field, it left right field wide open. Now, I'm not talking about politics and left and right. So we'll get on and we're going to start going through these places and do a few of them in each vid, because I'm just going to show you, here's some pictures of stuff, and one of these is just a guy walking over a mound talking. And then eventually he goes, look, here's the top of a T-pillar. And then he starts walking and talking and goes, there's another one. And he starts walking and talking, and there's some more. Hey, here's a little piece of pottery, but that doesn't date from what these pillars do. Stuff like that. It's not any way an archaeological dig. But here's this site, which, it isn't as big looking, but you never know what you never knew. You never knew. Like, share, and subscribe, guys, and enjoy. And we'll get on to the next one. But I wanted to introduce all these sites for over the next month or two, mixed in with all my other videos. I'm not going to try to cram it in there. I think I'm cramming a little too much. The world's coming to an end for some people to enjoy. But we'll get on to the next one. Filter these in. Keep this all in mind. Peace.